Hi there, this is Mike Sweeney from SaberCoaching.com. With me is a special guest,
Jim Young from thecenteredcoach.com.
So, people have been talking to us a lot about this concept of the gentle man. So, we thought maybe we'd share a bit about the origin story.
Yeah, so I want you to start on this because
you want me to start?
You're the guy who said it. So I'll just say that like what hit me was I heard the words gentleman with a space in between. And so tell them how you say
it away.
Yeah.
So I guarantee based on the quantity of like 80s, 90s movies, like somewhere I heard it in there. But I don't know where from, so I've kind of integrated it as my own.
Movies.
So I was at this training program that Jim and I went to, CTI coaching, and we were in this program. There were probably, I'd say about 26 women and 4 men, maybe 4 or 5 men around there.
Yeah.
And what I witnessed was women were powerful in that session, and I felt like they had a lot of space to be as big as they possibly could. And one of the things that I noticed is that the men seemed like they were confident enough to be right-sized. They weren't taking up too much space. They weren't over-participating. They weren't mansplaining. They weren't over-talking anybody. And we got to the end, and at the end you always have the 30 people or so, and you do that little I am complete. You have your conversation around the horn. And I've had a long history. I mean, you can see the saber hanging up there. Like, I have a long history of maybe not feeling like the most gentle of men. And I got to the end of the session, and I had my piece to say, and I said, it was such a gift to be surrounded by such gentle men. Woo! And I felt like the air just went out of the room.
Yeah, so I didn't feel like the air went out of the room. I felt like all the air went out of me. So I had probably 6 years ago started to identify something that I didn't quite get. And it was like, I didn't understand what it was to be a man in the world today. I'd reached kind of early 40s, some big things were going on in life. And I'd been working on it for years, and it wasn't even in the words, it was in the space between the words. It was when I heard gentle man, it was like that space just kind of shot straight through me. And it was this moment that just kind of took everything I'd been thinking about, writing about, pondering for years, and just crystallized it all into that one moment. And I was like, oh, that's who I am.
You know, the crazy part is the silence that did it.
It was
like
it
wasn't even the words.
Yeah, we were joking last night that I'm going to start calling you the spaceman.
I'll take the spaceman. I'll get some space earrings or anything. So that part I edit out usually because I don't wear earrings, but maybe I'll just let it fly. But
gentleman could.
Yeah, gentleman could. So that's the challenge. Am I going to leave the earrings in the video? So we've been just talking about this, and I've noticed that the concept of the gentleman seems to resonate. Because when you say gentleman, it's all about opening doors for people. But when you say
worse,
or say more about that.
Oh, I mean, if you do a search for gentlemen,
that's right.
Context,
gentlemen clubs
that are anything but gentle.
Yeah, I sent you a few that I found that were not as gentle. They were a little bit rough.
Yes, absolutely. That space switches the context in such an incredible way.
Yeah, and I've had the opportunity, at least in the last few years, to be surrounded mostly by gentlemen, but I didn't know them by that name.
Yeah.
I remember the first one I ever worked for, and I realized that he didn't talk that much. He listened really well. He asked great questions. He remembered things about people. He operated with humility. I remember that being one of the first gentleman models that I had to follow. And you certainly are a gentleman. And the other men in that room were gentlemen. And the thing that this concept, or I feel like this concept is resonating even more with women.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, in talking to the women in our courses, but tons of people that I've talked to since then over the past several weeks, women are like, oh, we need more of that in the world. We need more of that in the world. And for me, it's like a coming home. So like, as I've thought about this, I've always been this gentle man. And I think it's one of the things that's interesting to me of talking with you about it is that your story sounds a lot different. But like I was the sensitive kid, shy, who would deal with the sissy mama's boy kind of barbs as a kid that just got worse and more, certainly socially inappropriate these days. And it became something that I just needed to put away. because it wasn't okay. And I think that's still true a lot in society today. And so being able to be in that course where I could just live as a gentleman and then have somebody name it and be like, oh, I got a brother here. And then it was cool to hear that, like, that's not your experience, that story.
No, my experience is much, I think there's a lot of parallels to that. I think I moved away from a lot of that. You know, growing up as a young boy, you learn not to cry. At least I learned not to cry. I learned that, you know, physical roughhousing, you know, wrestling, fighting between brothers with your dad is a common expected thing. Fights on the playground, you know, heavy competition. And then once I went into the Army, it was on. Like you kind of had to bring that tough guy image. And I knew some folks in the military that were not necessarily like that. I'd say higher evolved, more on the gentleman side, but you still had the kind of grunty feeling of being in, for me, the armored cavalry. So I feel like, and kind of early in my first marriage, I feel like I didn't really know gentle at all. And my ex-wife certainly can attest to that. But it was a progression for me that happened through like personal development, leadership development, some of these coaching courses. And it wasn't until, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago where people started to tell me, oh, no, you're way beyond the average.
Yeah.
And that, I didn't believe them at first, but it feels good to feel like that's an identity as a gentleman that I can claim.
Absolutely. And I think for me, and I wrote about this recently, is that it took me some of this realization, some of this work over the past several years. And I think, you know, maybe it's culminating in this work through the CTI training, is that I had to get to a place where I felt strong enough in that identity to reveal my gentleness that had always been this huge piece of who I am, and that would come out, you know, pretty obviously to a lot of people, but I just couldn't say it.
Yeah.
I think that was probably the key moment for me, was to like hear somebody say it who I knew a tiny fraction of your story and was like, oh, you just okayed that for me.
Wow. Yeah, because I mean, I definitely pegged you as that, but I didn't know what it was called.
Yeah.
And I think there's a level of intimacy between men, men who are friends, men who can hug. That stuff is okay.
Yeah.
And
as earlier.
Yeah, as I start to figure out, you know, where I am and what's my place in this world, we have started to do some interviews with some gentlemen out there. And one of the first things we'll ask them a few questions about best thing about being a man, worst things about being a man. And we get to the gentleman question, and everyone seems to kind of sit up a little differently. But when we ask them, what does the phrase gentleman mean to you? Almost to a person, kind of effeminate, soft, like weak, those kind of things come out first.
Yeah.
They're not the next few words.
Right. It's the visceral reaction is that it's the weakness of a man to have this gentle quality. And then as they sit with it a little bit, the responses start to get thoughtful, caring, able to help people connect, kind. Yeah. Right.
Empathetic, high EQ. So I think we should just pause there. This is just part one of our discussions on the gentleman concept. If you want to talk to us more about this, go ahead and hit us up in the comments. And more to follow on this topic. And I hope everybody has a good one. Thanks.
See ya.